Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello students. In this video, I will be taking up the second part of the last chapter of science, that is sustainable management of natural resources. In the first part, I told you what are natural resources and why is it important to manage them in a sustainable manner. I also told you what changes can you bring about in your life for sustainable management of natural resources. Now, the second part of this chapter actually focuses on forest and wildlife. So why forest and wildlife is considered as a natural resource and how it is being mismanaged and what are the damage which human activities are causing to the forest and wildlife and how we can stop or remove these damages. So let's begin. Forest and wildlife. Forests are called the biodiversity hotspots. Okay, why biodiversity hotspots? Because in a forest we see diverse kind of living organisms, right from small grass, herbs to tall trees, right from microorganisms, insects, reptiles to the birds and huge animals. So it is a region of biodiversity hotspot. So if we clear a forest, actually, if we clear any land from the forest for any purpose like setting up industry or setting up urban areas or building roads, then we are actually causing loss to that biodiversity. Okay, so loss of biodiversity leads to loss of ecological stability of that area. Because naturally in a forest, there is a balance between biotic and abiotic components. But once it is cleared, the imbalance is created and that biodiversity is lost forever. Okay, so now as an activity, just try to think about the forest products which you are using in your day-to-day life, like timber, firewood, medicinal plants, fodder for cattle, honey. Depending upon where you are staying, the kind of material which you are getting from the forest may vary. So there are many categories of people who are dependent on the forest and who are actually affected if forest lands are being cleared. So such persons or group of people who are dependent on the forest and whose life will get adversely affected if the forests are cleared, okay, if they do not have the reach to the forest, such group of peoples are called the stakeholders. Okay, so we have divided the stakeholders into 4 categories to understand it nicely. First is the local people. The local people who are living near the forest area, like tribals or in the remote regions. Okay, they are dependent on the forest for many day-to-day their activities. For example, they take bamboo from forest to build their huts. They take firewood to cook food. They take herbs from the forest as medicines. Even for food, they collect fruits and nuts from the forest. So local people are the stakeholders of forest. The second category is the forest department of the government. The forest department, they own the land because such areas are owned by the government and they control all the resources from the forest. The third category is the industrialist, because industrialists there are many industries who are dependent on the forest for the supply of raw material. From the small beedi industry, okay, to large scale paper industry, they all get the raw material from the forest. So they are also the stakeholders because they are dependent on the forest for regular supply of raw material. The fourth category is the wildlife and nature enthusiast. There are many people, many groups who want to save the nature, okay, as the way it is. So these are the 4 categories of stakeholders of forest. Now let's study about them in detail. First is the local people and the forest, how they are the stakeholder. Local people need large quantities of firewood, small timber and thatch because for them this is a source of energy. They use it as a fuel to cook food and for other activities. Bamboo is also used to make huts and for baskets for collecting and storing food. Then the implements for agriculture, fishing, hunting, they are also largely made up of wood, which they collect from forest. Forests are also site for fishing and hunting. The local people, they gather fruits, nuts, and medicines from the forest, and they also graze their cattle in the forest and also collect fodder for their cattle. So to feed their cattle, they also are dependent on the forest. So of lately, from the ancient time, these local people have been using the forest, but they have been using it in a very sustainable manner. Okay, there was no over exploitation. The practices used by them were quite sustainable. They used to graze them. Suppose they used to graze in the graze their cattle in the Himalayas during summers. Then during winters, they used to come down to the valley. During summers, they'll again go back and use that land. And in that period, the grass will regrow on its own. So this is just an example to tell you that local people used to use the forest resources in a sustainable way. But after the arrival of the British, they took over the forest land. They became the owner, and the local people were not allowed to use the forest resources. So these local people were confined to small areas, which led to actually over exploitation of resources. Now, the smaller resources were becoming overexploited because of that reason. Now, after independence, the forest department, they took over the forest from the British, but they also did not take care about the local needs of the local people. Okay, once they took over the forest land from the British, they also started supporting the industries. Okay, because it was a source of revenue for them. So local people were still avoided. They were still not allowed to uh, to collect resources and to collect timber, fuel, such other things from the forest. Because of this, most of the forest land was converted into monoculture. What is monoculture? That is growing only one kind of tree or plant in the area. This is called monoculture. The forest area is cleared and one kind of plant or tree which is of commercial importance, like teak wood. Okay, so eucalyptus trees, they are grown over large area. So this leads to loss of biodiversity. Huge areas are first cleared, then this destroyed large amount of biodiversity. Local people are unable to collect leaves for fodder or herbs for medicine or fruits and nuts as food. So even after independence, our own Indian government did not take care of the needs of the local people, and also did not take care about the natural resources. This led to loss of biodiversity in the Indian forests. So this was about the first stakeholders, that is the local people, and how they suffered. The second stakeholders are the industrialists, and the third one are the forest department. Now, monoculture plantation, they are useful to the industries because they want specific products from the forest. Okay, so once there is monoculture, there is increase in the supply of that product. And for forest department also, it is beneficial because it is source of revenue from them. Okay, once they sell the raw material to the industry, they earn money out of it. So the industries which are based on forest are like timber industries, paper, lac, and sports material. These are few industries which actually encourage this monoculture for supply of raw material. Now, the industries, they consider the forest mainly as source of raw material. For them, nothing beyond that. It is just a source of raw material. They do not take care of the environment. They influence the government for access to the industrialists. They are rich and powerful. They influence the government for access to the raw material at a very low rate. Okay, so they have more reach, more power than the local people. That is why the industrialists, they are not interested in sustainability of forest resources. So once they have used up the resources from one piece of land, they go further deeper into the forest and start using the more and more resources. Okay, this has led to deforestation on a large scale. But local people, earlier, what they used to do, they used to actually there was a sustainable development. They used to take resources, but there was reforestation side by side. Okay, so but the industrialists, they are selfish, they are greedy, they are utilizing the raw material on a large scale, but not taking care of the environment, which creates imbalance in the nature. The fourth category are the nature enthusiasts. Okay, there are many examples of local people who are working traditionally for the conservation of forest. A very good example is the Bishnoi community in Rajasthan. Okay, they work for the conservation of forest and wildlife in their region. Okay, for centuries, they have been conserving the flora and fauna of their region. The government also announced Amrita Devi Bishnoi National Award for Wildlife Conservation in the memory of Amrita Devi Bishnoi, who sacrificed her life, okay, in 1731, along with 363 other people, because they were fighting to protect the khejri trees in the Khejrali village near Jodhpur. So while fighting with the local industrialists and the local government, they lost their life, but they fought for the conservation of the forest in their region. So this is just an example to tell you that there are many group of such people who want to conserve forest and who are even ready to sacrifice their own life for this purpose. Okay, traditional use of forest. Okay, so the next topic is the traditional use of forest. Now, we just saw from many examples that the traditional use of forest, the government had been prejudiced against the traditional use of forest. Local people were removed from the forest. They were not allowed the access to the forest produce. So there is no basis for this discrimination. For example, I will give you an example to show you this. The Great Himalayan National Park, it contains within itself the reserved area. It has alpine meadows which were grazed by the sheep in summer. So nomadic people used to come in the summers, they used to graze their sheep in that area. Now, British people, they stopped the use of that land by the nomadic people. Even after independence, those nomadic shepherds were not allowed to use that alpine forest. So what happens? It was found that the grass grew over the time, then it fell over that area and it prevented the growth of fresh grass. Okay, so the traditional use was a better and sustainable use. Okay, so from this example, we can say that local people were using the natural resources in a very sustainable manner. If there was no over exploitation, then it was a sustainable management of natural resources. By removing the local people from these resources, the government mismanaged these resources. Okay, so there are many such examples in which the forests have further degraded by such mismanagement. Now, what could be the possible reasons for forest damage? The damage caused to the forest cannot be attributed to the needs of the local people. First reason is the deforestation caused by industrial needs. I just told you, because of the industrial needs, many forests have been cleared either to set up industries or to set up monoculture, okay, where one kind of commercially useful plants are grown on a large area. Second is deforestation caused due to developmental projects like building roads or building dams. They need huge pieces of land. So for that also forests has been cleared. The third reason is the damage of forests is caused by tourists and the arrangements made for their conveniences. You must have noticed there are so many resorts and which are coming up in the forest area. Okay, so tourists go there, enjoy their weekend, but have you ever noticed to set up those resorts, a large piece of land has been cleared. So many trees must have been cut down. And moreover, apart from that, the tourists, when they come to those areas, they also cause pollution. They use up water resources. They throw away plastic in open. So this is also causing damage to the forest. So these are the possible reasons for the forest damage. So now, how can we manage the forest? Okay, managing the forest, managing the extent of human intervention in the forest. From these above examples, so how the forest should be managed and how much extent should be of human intervention in the forest. From the above examples, we saw that although we do need forests produce, okay, but we should think about environment also. It should be environmentally and developmentally sound. There has to be a balance between the two. We want development, we want raw material for industries, but on the other hand, we also should look upon the environment, that whether our actions are causing damage to the environment or not, and how can we prevent it. And while the environment is preserved, the benefits of controlled exploitation. What does this mean, controlled exploitation? That although the forest products are being used, but it should be in a controlled manner to cause less damage or no damage to the environment. And whatever benefit is we are getting from that controlled exploitation, it should go to local people also. And by doing this, there will be decentralized economic growth. Okay, the growth will not only be there for the industrialists, for the rich and powerful people, for those who are living in big cities and towns, but this growth should also be for the local people living near the forest, living in remote villages. So this will lead to decentralized economic growth and ecological conservation both. All right, so that is why we say that local people, we should involve local people in managing the natural resources.